The jury in the Corrine Brown corruption trial has been deliberating for nearly 4 hours now. We have a timer going in the bottom of the left corner of your screen.
And just before News 4 Jax at 4, we sent a push alert when we heard from Brown's inner circle that she, quote, appears to be happy, almost jubilant, while waiting for a verdict. We have multiple crews at the federal courthouse right now. We begin, though, with Joy Purdy. Joy, how did Brown seem when she went to lunch near the courthouse?
Well, Mary, Tom, I saw her. She seemed to be in good spirits. She was very attentive during closing arguments. There were no outbursts or any large displays of emotion today. She did leave for lunch, and a gaggle of reporters followed her. And she was just going across the street right to Sweet Pete's to have lunch with a special group of military veterans. She returned back here to the courthouse a little after 4:30, figuring that court was getting ready to wrap up for the night. And it was just minutes after she returned to court that the judge made an announcement and said, any day that the jury is not close to having a verdict, he will close up shop, likely end court for the day at about 5 o'clock. And we heard the 5 o'clock whistle just go off here downtown, so we expect people to start filing out of the courtroom any minute now. Still no verdict. The last time we saw the jury was during deliberations, and they were not bored at all. You would think through all of this that they would have formulated their opinions. It did not seem that way. They seemed very attentive still. And this is what Jim Pickett was telling me. He said that they were still taking notes, as they have been throughout this entire trial. Jim Pickett is joining me now on the other side of the federal courthouse. Jim, you told me that the jury actually got a compliment in court today.
Well, they did. The judge complimented them for their duty, their service, but they have their biggest duty to do right now. He also complimented the attorneys in each case and said that they all did a fine job as well. It was interesting during closing arguments today as they were talking about what had happened here. You know, we'd heard a lot from this throughout the whole case, and now the attorneys were wrapping it up. Here's what they said. Corrine Brown has been consistent when she comes out from court. She won't talk about the case.
What do you hope the jury remembers the most out of this morning?
I'm trying to go to lunch with my Moppet.
But today we saw someone else in the courtroom who's not been there before, but has been a part of the investigation, the Congresswoman's daughter, Chantrell. She was never called as a witness because she said she would plead the Fifth. I asked her about that. Why would you have taken the Fifth? You didn't want to speak?
Excuse me, I'm just trying to get through. Excuse me.
Sure, we are too. We're just trying to find out because you were going to speak on your mother's defense. Today was the last time attorneys for both sides had a chance to convince the jury about Brown's innocence or guilt. Prosecutors began by saying Brown knew One Door for Education was a bogus charity. Eric Olshan argued that Brown lied to donors and no one else benefited. They stressed Brown only took cash. She never purchased computers, and there were only 2 scholarships awarded. But Brown's attorney, James Smith, painted a different story, one where Ronnie Simmons, her chief of staff, is to blame. Smith says Simmons is a self-admitted liar and a thief with a criminal conviction, and he has a vested interest in what happens today. He ended by saying Brown was not to blame. She was getting up in age, now 70, and relied on her staff, who took advantage of that, and says prosecutors took the easy route and sold the story of corruption and theft because that's the one people want to believe. Prosecutors ended the day by saying this case is about Corrine Brown delivering to herself.
Doing okay? Great.
So what we have right now is with the jury deliberating right now. By the way, they did dismiss the 4 alternate jurors that were on the panel. They didn't know that at the time that they were actually alternate, and obviously some disappointment there as they went through this whole trial, but they're standing by just in case they're needed. We're live from the federal courthouse. Jim Pickett, Channel 4, the local station. Joy?
Jim, thank you. Folks, coming up at 6 o'clock, Lindsay Gardner is going to join me. She literally just walked out of federal court right now and told me that she was the only reporter sitting behind Corrine Brown's daughter. This is the first day that Corrine Brown's daughter, Chantrell, has been in the courtroom today. Lindsay Gardner is going to be talking about that. Of course, the prosecution saying that the daughter also benefited from this scam that was going on. So we're going to hear more about that. And of course, Lindsay has also a complete wrap up of what happened that from her vantage point from inside the courtroom today. For now, we are live outside the federal courthouse. I'll see you at 6 o'clock. Tom, Mary?
Thank you, Joy. If you missed anything from the trial, we have a recap of all the highlights, beginning with the opening statements to Corrine Brown's emotional testimony last Friday. You can find it all on our special section, news4jax.com/trial.